come back to us. And Amber, I'm gonna, oh, you're already unmuted and ready to go. So if you could take over from here.
All right, thank you. And first I just want to say I very much appreciate what you just said and the importance of that preparation. And I do have a couple slides that kind of speak to that preparation and how Shore Acres is unique. So just first want to verify everybody can see this screen with the pelicans?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yep, we're
All right, so there's a few different speakers we're going to do. So I'm going to get us kicked off, and I'm going to do a quick situation report for what we saw with Tropical Storm Ita. And by the time the storm reached us, it was Tropical Storm, so that's why you'll hear me refer to it as such. And then once I give the situation report, I'm going to do a quick kind of a few slides on planning and how we can plan specifically for the Shore Acre scenario and kind of the gray area that Shore Acre seems to fall in when we talk about mandatory evacuations and level A evacuations. Because sometimes, you know, what floods Shore Acres or Riviera Bay or some of these other low-lying areas aren't the triggers that would trigger a mandatory evac A. So, you know, in absence of a mandatory evacuation doesn't necessarily mean you're not affected. So it's taking that risk assessment of your personal, you know, situation, but I won't get ahead of myself. The city is wonderfully represented tonight. We have the Emergency Management Office, Public Works is represented, the Building Office is represented, sanitation. I'm sure there's much more that I missed. So any questions that you have, and also to my colleagues, if I miss something or misspeak, please speak up and correct me. So with that, all right, so we will start with the situation report. So just a quick summary, and you know, I heard the conversation earlier, you know, talking about, you know, almost the silver lining of these storms is, you know, we know that they're coming. And we do generally. Some we have more notice than others. Tropical Storm Ita was really tough to track. So in a nutshell, Ita passed about 40 miles west of St. Pete as a strong tropical storm. It reached hurricane status briefly right around here where the red dot is, the Fort Myers area. So I know you see two different tracks here on the screen. So the one on the right is the actual path that Ita took. And the one on the left was the projected path the day before. So you'll see this is the 1 p.m. Tuesday. And so when I say that Ita was unpredictable, it's not just that the track shifted 150 miles, bringing St. Pete and Pinellas County into the cone, but the forward speed changed dramatically. So on Tuesday's prediction, this is where the storm said it was going to, that prediction said the storm was going to be here on Wednesday at 7 p.m. In reality, within 24 hours, the storm is actually here. So not only did it shift, but it brought a lot less time to prepare for that scenario. So it shifted in track, and if you look at, you know, if I were to scroll out of the screen, and you know, as Gary mentioned earlier, it took a similar path that Iota is doing now, and that it made landfall in Central America and looped back out. Luckily, and hopefully it stays that way, the storm passes on through and into the Pacific and doesn't make a turn. And at this time, there's no predictions for that. But prayers certainly with those folks in Central America. All right, coming over. I just want to go over a quick timeline for Ita. You know, again, time is our friend sometimes with these storms, and we do start early. But you know, forecasting storms is difficult, and we're at the mercy of Mother Nature, I suppose. So then on November 3rd is when we actually started those daily National Weather Service briefings, where we do daily webinars and calls with NWS. On November 6th, we started the ROC calls. That's our Response Operations Coordination Group with County Emergency Management and all the county stakeholders. That includes the school board and transportation assets and things like that. And in those calls, we formulate what's called the best, mid, and worst case scenarios and what we're going to do based on each of those scenarios. So early on, best case was we get nothing. Mid case was we get the strong tropical storm. Worst case is we get the hurricane, the Cat 1 hurricane. And we plan based on those, and we scale up or scale down as we need. On November 6th, we also started meeting the special needs task force meetings and the shelter task force meetings. to make plans based on those scenarios. And that's also the day that city department storm notifications went out, so protective actions could start being put into place. On November 7th, we did a call down to all of our special needs shelter registrants that are electrically dependent and mobile home. So that way, if we needed to act on that worst case scenario, we were able to go get them and knew who would need a ride. On November 9th, we upgraded that to include all level A special needs registrants just in case. And this is when we still had, thought we had time. That's when they expected that storm to stall out in the Gulf. November 10th, the same day on November 10th, in the morning is when the Weather Service said they're going to back off the webinars, minimal impacts to our area, but we're going to, stay focused just in case. To that evening, the storm tracked and the forward speed increased, and that's when we got in that 3-day cone. And then the next day is when our impacts began with Ita. So that's when our storm surge warning was issued. We had a brief window to get sandbags out and distributed county shelters. There was 2 recommended shelters opened up in the county that residents could go to if they didn't feel safe. And then our city operational sub-centers activated. So you can see that we took a lot of time planning, in the beginning, and then very quickly how things can change and push you into activation. These are just some actions from the city that is more specific to Shore Acres. We put the VMBs, or the variable message boards, went up on the streets that lead into Shore Acres and Snell Isle area. We were able to get sandbags out for a few hours. Northeast Park gave out 1,300. We had 3 locations in the city that gave out a total of 4,200 sandbags. That optional shelter was opened. The closest one to us was at the Lellman Exchange. We had forestry crews that were out all night trying to pick up the large debris and clear any trees to keep roads open as much as possible. All of our sub-centers were activated and regular reporting out to the city. Fire and police responded all night to calls. So winds never reached that point where we would pull out our crews. So as people called 911 or had issues, sometimes it took longer to get there because there were so many calls, but those crews never did come off the road. And then at daylight the next morning, teams went out to start conducting that damage assessment. Some quick impacts. I talked to the National Weather Service this morning to get what our final numbers were. So we had 4.5 feet MSL, which is the mean sea level. So 4.5 feet above sea level. And they gave us the 3.47 value, MHHW, which is the mean high water, which confused me. So I asked them to put it into layman's terms. And basically, they said 3.47 feet of abnormal water above normally dry ground. So that, I think, helps put it into perspective a little bit more. We had tropical storm force winds of 41 mile per hour sustained and 58 mile per hour gusts, and saw widespread 5.7 inches of rain, and then some spots up to 9 inches. So very quickly, I just want to touch on the emergency plan, what Gary talked about. And, this is, we go around each year and we talk to neighborhoods and churches and whoever invites us in to talk about how to get ready for a storm. And these are the 3 tenets that we really hit, which is stay informed, know your risk, and make a plan. And for Shore Acres, this is going to look a little different. First, I want to talk about connect to emergency information. So the news does a great job at getting the word out. For those that are on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, I just ask if you could put Pinellas County, follow them or like their page, and as well as the City of St. Pete, even the fire and the police pages. Because when information is released, when we get it from the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Center, or decisions are made by the county to evacuate or to open shelters, it's through those channels that we're going to make sure we push it out. So in addition to following your favorite news source, make sure you're getting local government on there, being City of St. Pete and Pinellas County. At the bottom there, I've also included our Citizens Information Centers. So we have the County CIC, which is 464-3000, and then the Mayor's Action Center line, 893-7111. And they'll have all that information as well. So if you ever have questions, you can give them a call. Assess your risk, and this is probably one of the most important points. And as Gary said, may not flood somebody else, whether it's your neighbor the next block down or a mile down, may not flood their house, might flood your house. Or, you could be more prone to wind, medically vulnerable. All these things change your situation and really dictate whether you stay or whether you go. And it dictates when you stay or when you go. So, knowing all of these things ahead of time and what your risk is, if you know that your house is, 5 feet above sea level and 5 to 7 feet of surge is expected, then you know that you could get water in your house and you're able to better make those decisions, even if that decision is in absence of a mandatory evacuation order. And then plan what you do. So when a storm warning is issued for our area, that means those conditions are expected within 36 hours. In this case, we got them a lot faster than that. So listen to the warning, read the warnings and what kind of warnings they are, and then listen carefully to the evacuation order if it's given. And in that evacuation order, there's a start time and end time. So as Gary was saying, that you only have so many ways of egress out of short acres. So make sure you listen to that evacuation order, and those orders will always give you an end time before conditions are expected to deteriorate. And again, it's only as good as the forecast gives us, so you always want to be on the front end of that evacuation order if you can, and not wait till last minute. And that's why it's so important to make sure you're prepared ahead of time to know, what your trigger point is for you to go and where you're going to go. So again, if no evacuation's ordered, you need to know where and when you're going to go. So consider that predicted storm surge and figure out if you're going to be affected. We have generally, if there's no mandatory evacuation, there's 2 recommended shelters opened up in the county. They're usually the Lellman Exchange over in Lellman, or North County. There's a shelter open in Clearwater. So if you can't have any other options, hotels, friends, and on high ground, those are always options for you. If there is a mandatory evacuation, that's when all the shelters will be open. So the different school shelters, which are listed on the county's website. And that's basically it for this page. Make sure you have those emergency notifications set. If you remember on Wednesday, our phones were going bonkers with the, it sounds like the Amber Alert, that it was the National Weather Service letting us know there was a storm surge warning or a tornado warning for our area. So make sure you have those activated on your phone. And finally, sandbags. We gave out sandbags, so just remember you can get sandbags today, tomorrow, anytime. We do offer those all year round at our stormwater office. They're at 1744 9th Avenue North. Okay, and these are just some resources. stpeteprepares.com is the easiest one to remember, and that'll link you to those other pages as well. So go check out that website for pretty much most of what I discussed, especially the evacuation plans and shelter plans and how you can build a plan. And if you have any questions, if you don't ask them today, you can ask them there at that website, emergency.management@stpete.org.
Okay, Amber, thank you so much you have to be busy these days, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us in Shore Acres. And we can open it up to questions now. I think the biggest questions, you might not have an answer to this, but maybe you can provide some guidance, is what do we do with debris? Before